Hello everyone, my name is Anne. Welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. Today I am going to do the Carol of the Books tag. So you have probably seen a couple of other people doing this tag that was created by Holly at A Lovely Day with Holly. And I was very excited to do this tag. I love the theme, and this one really made me think and go through my bookshelves. I wanted to do as many as possible as I could with actual physical books, but a few of them will be digital versions because I don't own hard copies of them, and they just fit the prompts perfectly. So here we go. So basically how it works is there are 15 Christmas carols and a prompt for each one. So the idea was to think of a book that fit the description for the Christmas Carol. So let's get started. The first one is It Came Upon Them a Midnight Clear. And for that one, we were supposed to find a book with a nighttime scene on the cover. And the one that I found is one that I read as a teenager, I guess. And I have not reread it since then. And that is Under Eastern Stars by Linda Chaikin. So Linda Chaikin wrote mostly in the 90s, I think. Yeah, this was 1993. And she wrote a series of books that were set mostly in India or other like exotic places like that. And it was very interesting. You really felt like you were there. The setting is probably the best part of it, a part of the stories. You really felt like you were there. This one, I believe, was about a family that owned a silk farm in India, and there's some intrigue involved with the East India Company, and all of the people involved in this story are British, I believe. And then there's like a whole adventure, and there's a bit of a mystery. It refers to India's dark underworld, etc. So it's kind of an exciting adventure story set in colonial India. You can see that the background is like the nighttime sky with the stars and everything. And there are a lot of scenes that happen at nighttime in this story. Then we have number 2, O Little Town of Bethlehem. So this one is a book set in a small town. And Cranford is the one that I immediately thought of by Elizabeth Gaskell. And it is set in the small town of Cranford. And it's all about the lives of the people who live in Cranford. And it's like definitely a village setting. So that one is the first one that came to mind, Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. And then number 3 is Joy to the World, which is the complete opposite, and that is a global setting. And that one was very tricky for me. It took me a while to think about that. And then I think the one I have fits that. So the one I thought of was 1984 by George Orwell. And it's all of the action that's described in the story takes place in one part of the world. But there is a whole, like, the larger plot is about the world being divided basically into 3 parts. There's Oceania and Eurasia and East Asia, and they're all like fighting against each other. And one is always the enemy of the other, and one is always winning or whatever, but it's all like politically manipulated, etc. So anyway, a lot of the things that happen that influence the action in the story take place at a global level. So that is why I chose it for this prompt, and I think it fits. Maybe a tiny bit of a stretch, but I think it fits. So let me know what you think. That is 1984 by George Orwell. Number 4 is Silent Night. Excuse me. And so you were supposed to think of a book that has an element of silence in the story. And immediately I thought of The Silent Governess by Julie Klassen, which I don't have a hard copy of. And I don't remember much about it, but I do know that it features the main character, the heroine, is a girl who for some reason she has to pretend to be mute as she takes this governess position. So she pretends that she cannot talk because she needs to keep a secret of some kind, and she's like playing a part kind of. And I don't remember much else about the story. I just remember that, wow, that would be really hard to like be able to speak but not allowed to speak in order to keep up the persona and the story that you have given about yourself. So that is The Silent Governess by Julie Klassen. Number 5 is I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, and the prompt is a book with a married couple as the main characters. And this one was very tricky. I mean, I know I've read quite a few novels with like Marriage of Convenience, where, you know, they're married very early on in the story and it's about their life as a married couple. And I have read other books where a married couple is center stage of the story. In fact, one that occurred to me was The Great Alone by Kristin Hannah, which I read earlier this year. And there's a married couple that's definitely at the forefront of that story. The story is more or less told through the perspective of their daughter, but they're definitely main characters in the story. So that could be one. It's a free bonus. But the one that I want to mention is one I read most recently, and that is A Christmas Party by Georgette Hare. There could be some discussion about who exactly constitutes main character in this story, but definitely one of the main characters is a married couple, and they play prominent parts in the story and the development of the plot, and they are key characters out of the assortment of characters that have gathered at this house for this house party. So definitely a married couple here. This is a fun murder mystery that takes place at Christmas time. If you are in the mood for a good Christmassy book that's not really like a romance novel per se, or whatever. It's not quite a cozy mystery, but comes pretty close. So that's A Christmas Party by Georgette Hare. The next one is Away in a Manger, and this one is supposed to be a book set on a farm or featuring animals. And I don't know why I'm on a George Orwell kick, but I mean, to me the obvious answer was Animal Farm. I mean, animals are the characters, so can't get much more animal-y than that. So, Animal Farm, George Orwell, check. And then we have I'll Be Home for Christmas. And this one is supposed to, this book should feature a character who is just trying to get home. And, oh, that was so hard for me. I was like flipping through my books and thinking, well, no. I mean, you'd think like it would be like a reasonably common storyline, but no, I had a hard time with that one. But I finally settled on one that I read earlier this week, or finished earlier this week, the Enchanted Sonata by Heather Dixon Wallwork. And in that book, she is transported to, what do they call it? Imperia is what is the name that she gives it. But it's based on the Nutcracker. So she's in the Candyland kind of, you know, place. And she's all the way through the story, she is just saying that she wants to be home. She needs to be home by such and such a time, Saturday night, because she's supposed to play in a concert, and etc., etc. So she's constantly like making plans to go home and trying to get home, but things always happen and keep her from actually going home. So that plays a key part in the progress of the story, her desire to go back home and leave Imperia, I believe it's called. So that goes for that one. And then we have We Three Kings, which is supposed to feature a trio of characters. Again, this was tricky for me, but I thought of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, which, I mean, you could say that Scrooge is the main character, so totally get that. However, you have the three ghosts. That's a trio, right? So you have the ghosts of Christmas past, the ghosts of Christmas present, and the ghosts of Christmas yet to come. And they all visit Scrooge on the same evening. And yeah, so that's three. A trio of characters and they feature prominently. They may not be the main characters, but I mean, without them, the story wouldn't happen, right? So they're pretty primary, essential to the story. So that works, right? Of course, right. And then we have 12 Days of Christmas, and this one requires 12 letters in the title. Let me double check the one I picked. Okay, yes. So the one I settled on was Loving Luther by Alison Pittman, which is about Martin Luther and his wife, Katerina, I think was her name, their story. And it was told from his wife's perspective largely, if I remember correctly. And there's not a great deal known about their history, but what is known, the author, Alison Pittman, was able to extrapolate, her whole story. And it's written in novel form, but it's based on fact. And as much fact as we know to be true. So it was very interesting to get the background of her life, as well as Martin Luther's, and then how they came together and their marriage and everything. So that was very interesting. And that is called Loving Luther. And there are 12 letters in that title. The next one is In the Bleak Midwinter. And this book is supposed to be set in wintertime or feature snow. And the one that I thought of immediately was The Snow Child, which I read earlier this year in January, which is based on the Russian fairy tale about the snow child. Is that Snegorotchka? Anyway, it's about a childless couple that wants to have a child, and so they make a snow baby outside, and the snow baby kind of comes to life. So this was a retelling of that set in Alaska, pretty sure. And during the late 19th century, maybe early 20th century era. I think so. It's definitely got a bit of magical realism because it's a fairy tale retelling, and this particular fairy tale doesn't really lend itself to a straightforward realistic telling. Or, I guess it could. You could take it that way if you really wanted to. But if you kind of try to stay true to the idea of the fairy tale, it's really hard to do it in a realistic way. So, anyway, so there's a little bit of magical realism in the story, and the ending honestly leaves a lot of questions, but it was very well written. It is a little bit on the heavier side, but it is very beautifully written, and it's a good read for January. So if you're looking for a good book to read in January, you might want to pick up that one up. It's good. It's a good one. Maybe it might be too, if you struggle with, sadness or depression or your mood or something in January, you might not want that one because it's not very uplifting, but it fits the mood of January very well, in my opinion. And that's The Snow Child. I forget the author's name. Sorry. Then we have Blue Christmas, and this one was an all blue cover. And so the one I picked is All the Light We Cannot See. And I love this book so much, but I really need to reread it. It's been several years since I read it. I remember loving it so much. The ending I didn't love. I felt like it could have ended with a little more of a redemptive storyline, but overall, I really enjoy this book. I kind of want to see the Netflix version of it, although I've heard mixed reviews, but it seems like if nothing else, it's beautiful cinematography and good acting. So I would like to see it, but this is a really good book. Also very heavy. Then we have Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and the book prompt for this one is a book that deals with bullying, and a couple came to my mind, but this one is the one I settled on, Little Dorrit, which I read for Victober by Charles Dickens. And Dorrit in the story, the girl in the story, she is incessantly bullied and abused by her family, verbally. And they expect her to do everything for them. They are very narcissistic in their treatment of her. they have zero consideration for her, zero appreciation for anything she does for them, and she does a lot for them. And it's really an excellent depiction of a relationship like that, where you have someone who is constantly being taken advantage of and even abused to a certain extent. And anyway, so little Dorrit. Then we have Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and the prompt is that the book have a portrayal of the spiritual world. And the one that came to my mind was the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, which I do not have a hard copy of. I know I read a hard copy, and I used to own one. I don't know what happened to it. Actually, let me double check on my shelf over here. Yeah, no, I don't have that one, unfortunately. But that one is about it's an epistolary novel about two demons who are writing to each other. One is the uncle writing to his nephew, and basically the uncle is, I think he's supposed to be his uncle, whatever, supposed to be giving the younger one tips on how to tempt and draw away the person in their charge that they're supposed to be leading away from God. And it's just very eye-opening. I mean, obviously it's fiction and it's fictional, and I highly doubt that the demons are writing letters to each other. I don't even know if they're like uncle and nephew demons, but anyways, it is very thought-provoking as far as what goes into our temptations and why we choose to do some of the things that we do, and why some things attract us even when we know better, and some of the traps that we can easily fall into. And number 14, it's the most wonderful time of the year. And this book is supposed to be a story that manipulates time in some way. I've not read a lot of time travel books, and this one I read a few years back with my son. I don't think I've read the whole series. I think I read this one, which is the first in the series, and I've listened to maybe the next one in the series. But this is called Outlaws of Time, and the first book in the series is The Legend of Sam Miracle by N.D. Wilson. And it's a middle grade, I think, story. I think it's classified as middle grade. Oh, I forgot. This one is signed. A signed copy. This belongs to my son. This is has a really interesting approach to time travel, and the manipulation of time is a key part of the plot. It is a very intense story. Like, he tends to write kind of intense things. I've read a couple of his books. For middle grade, it can be intense. So, my son was fine with it. My older son was. My younger son couldn't really get into it. They also, okay, so they're intense when they get going, but they also tend to start kind of slowly. And my younger son needs a book that grips him right away. And so he could never get into them, but my older son enjoyed the whole series. And I found it interesting how they dealt with the concept of time in these books. I'll just read part of it, part of the synopsis here to give you an idea. So, Sam Miracle's life is made up of dreams that come to him when he's wide awake. They take him to another place in time where he's a courageous, legendary hero instead of a foster kid with two bad arms that can barely move. Sometimes these dreams are so real they seem like forgotten memories. And sometimes they make him believe that his arms might come alive again. But Sam is about to discover that the world he knows and the world he imagines are separated by one thing, time. And that separation is only an illusion. The laws of time can be bent and shifted by those with the ability to travel through the past, present, and future. One of these time walkers is out to protect Sam so that he can accept his greatest destiny, and another is out to kill him so that a prophecy will never be fulfilled. So, that was the series that I thought of. I think there are 3 books in this series, and they're very interesting, even for adults to read. And finally, Carols of the Bells. And that is a plot where music is a key element. So I could mention a few different ones, including the Enchanted Sonata, which I mentioned earlier, but the one I went with is The Lost Melody by Joanna Davidson Politano. And that one features a pianist who ends up in an asylum, and she inadvertently begins to realize the therapeutic effect that music can have on mental patients. And she begins to assist in the healing process of some of the inmates at the asylum by using her skills at the piano. So it becomes a huge part of the plot. It's part of who she is as a character. She's a concert pianist. So plays a huge part in the plot. So that is my version of the Carol of the Books tag. Thanks, Holly, for doing the tag, and tag, you're it. If you have not done this video yet, then I say go for it. It's a fun one to look through your shelves and your books and see which ones. There's some different and unusual prompts here that really make you think, and you'll have to dig through your books a little bit to find the ones that fit. So go for it. I look forward to watching your video, and I will talk to you next time.